and that's what I want to do. So welcome again to our super mentoring program, How to Develop Mentees and Mentors. And with that, let's get on the road. Why is this such an important topic? Because mentoring has been around, if you think about it, since the first time someone did an apprentice role. And the reason is because today we need to recognize the world of the Lone Ranger, who had Tonto, and Montanto was a mentee, is a world that's no longer here. Today we're in a world of teams. Teams who have to learn to work together, who have to learn social skills, they have to learn the technical skills of what they do, they have to work with other people and to interpersonal communication, etc. And so with all the different things they're doing in a company today and being part of not just one team but a team within teams and relating to other people's teams, it becomes more and more important that people can quickly grasp what they need to know, answer the questions that they need to be able to propel themselves to the next level in their organization and helping other people in their organization. And so it's really important for everybody to be able to accelerate their growth, develop new skills, and develop new roles, because we're all doing that. And so it's because we're part of teams that this is becoming so increasingly important. There are many different cultures. I'm just working on a presentation for a hedge fund right now on a collaborative culture, how people work together. But I think the critical part is to take collaboration to the second level, and that's building a performance culture. It's a culture that works for the employees, for the company, for the people who are the owners or the investors of the company, getting people to work together well to create and sustain growth. It's sustainability that's obviously the big byword in today's society. Jim Collins wrote From Good to Great and has since then seen many of those great fall and asks why, and his most recent book is on the failures of companies, why these companies fail. It's the sustaining that's critical, and I think the mentor concept, and especially super mentoring, is an ability to sustain growth over time because it provides a new cultural value, one of helping one another within a team setting. And so we like to focus in on the performance culture element of here and focus on what it does. So if I were building a company with a performance culture, first thing I'd be doing is hiring highly qualified talent. You want to hire the best people you can. Working on a presentation right now with, as I said, a hedge fund. They'll screen 300 people to get to one candidate. Okay? So finding the most qualified talent is critical. But the second half is, what do you do when you have the person there? And here's the important part. You want to encourage employees to be creative. That's something a mentoring program you'll find can do more uniquely than everything, because bosses, supervisors, are generally people who have a task, set of responsibilities they give to their workers and their peers, and they need these tasks accomplished to move forward in what they're doing. But the ability to push their creative juices, to create more innovation, can sometimes come from outside in a better way. When we're in a company, which many companies have, that becomes silos, where people work within a sphere and don't work with other teams effectively, then it becomes very important for them to understand what some of the career paths are. Otherwise, they feel that the ceilings are reached early on and are going to leave. The turnover rate of companies, as we all know, has been increasing over the last years. And then one of the reasons for that is people don't know very much about what's available in other areas, even though very often there are now techniques through HR, for example, to broadcast other jobs, etc. To truly understand that the skills you've developed in meeting planning might be useful in sales or marketing is something that you only get if you've been exposed to other people in the companies, and that's what comes out of mentoring very often. So what you want to do to develop a performance culture is develop effective teams to execute the strategy, where each sees what the strategy is, sees how it's greater than what they're doing within their silo, and sees how they can connect with other people to do it. And ultimately, it's really a two-step process, and it's very important to understand it. You want to help people obviously be more professional in your organization, producing more of the product, services, customer service quality that you're trying to produce, but it's also a personal issue. We're really focusing on the person and helping them. So it's enabling staff ultimately to make a difference to themselves so they can make a difference to the team. So the agenda I'm going to deal with today and teaching you about super mentoring and give you some of the experiences of the companies that I've worked with, which ranges from the Fortune 500 company that got us started in this area some 7 years ago to associations, private companies, etc., virtual companies where this is all relevant, is 4 issues. What is mentoring? I like to define terms. With super mentoring, why is it slightly different? If you're into a mentoring process, let me give you just some quick tips for being able to be a more effective mentor or mentee, and ultimately, what does it take to launch a great super mentoring program? So let's just first define, as I said, the term. What is mentoring? It's a method of teaching. It's a method of teaching by the mentor. It's a method of learning by the mentee, where experience as a professional, as a member of the company, comes in handy in helping someone who has less knowledge about roles, the organizational history, the strategy of the company, getting through the process of the organization, etc. It's a process of give and take. I share one of the fascinating parts is as we work in our mentoring programs very often, the specific skills that are of interest to a mentee are also ones a mentor feels they can benefit from. And that's one of the great wonders of super mentoring. So let's deal with some of the key mentoring foci. Might be skills, such as how to make effective presentations. Just today in a mentoring session that I had 2 people who need to present to new people within the company, a board and a marketing team, and had fears of doing it, never dealt with it before, and so incorporating that issue in the super mentoring is a good first step in getting them going. It might be specific skills. How to use the new version of Office has become an issue in one of my other mentoring situations. Second, the work habits. Things like type management, interpersonal relations, more effective communications. How to write great memos is, for example, a great habit and work skill that people need to learn and use. And we find that mentoring very often can focus on that as a way of building someone's skills and self-confidence so that they can grow, feel more comfortable in their own role, and as well as being able to work with the people around them. It's organizational issues, identifying the company's strategy, understanding where the company is going becomes a critical part. Not everyone understands it and can see it. Very often new employees come in, especially if they're more at the clerical level, administrative level, they see the world as full of tasks that somehow meet the bosses, supervisors, peer member, whoever's directing them, whims, needs, direction, but not understanding how it's aligned with the values and direction and strategy of that particular division, segment, company, and that's part of the organizational mentoring focus. And finally, career paths. What else can you do once you've acquired the skills? And why is taking initiative so important in an organization? Today we were dealing with a mentee who reports to 2 mentors, who has a mentor, reports to 2 different bosses, and both were applauding the person's skills and capabilities, but the same person wasn't taking enough initiative. And helping the person figure out why that's happening, especially having 2 bosses with different demands sometimes, is a critical issue the mentor needs to work through, and then help this person start taking initiative and help both of these supervisors realize they have to change some of the things they're doing. Key element in a mentoring process that you need to always be aware of, the mentor doesn't take over and do the mentee's task. It's an education process. It's a coaching process. It's a supportive project. It's an ongoing process where information goes back and forth at all times, but the key is accountability. The mentee is accountable to grow and stay committed to growing, and the mentor is accountable for keeping the process working. So what is the mentee role? Let's be very specific now. The person has to be somebody who wants more experience, wants more knowledge and skills, and realizes it'll help the person individually and as the person grows. It's willing to play the role of being a protege and apprentice, explore one's own strengths and weaknesses, and what are some of the situational issues that affect that person's job. Critical parts about what you're doing and how you're doing this. Do what it takes to accomplish the agreement. So there's an initial agreement, and each member has to really agree to do that, or else they won't go any further. And finally, they have to recognize that the world changes. Things change. Sometimes mentors and mentees leave, and someone else has to fill in. Sometimes, and more important than that, there's a change in the role that a person has, or a discovery of a different set of needs that really need to be addressed. And that's the critical part of mentoring. The mentee benefits them by growing professionally, because the mentor is opening doors to understand the organization, providing advice on the setting and achievement of goals. Goal setting is a very important part, as well as time management related to that. Providing guidance on the career path. If you follow this lead, it may take you the wrong direction. Giving you tools to increase productivity and success. We spend a lot of time on the different skills that might help the mentee. And ultimately, what the mentee benefits is by saving time. We can all learn all of this stuff. The trick is, why not learn it within 6 months or 4 months when you're new, rather than wait 3-4 years to do it. It's creating, from a performance culture point of view, creating opportunities for the individuals to make a difference earlier, faster, and more effectively. That's really our goal in developing a performance culture. What is it the mentor does? Well, it's again a role, being the expert on what they know, a coach, a counselor, and share the same curiosity in learning it. I teach a lot of Covey's system for time management in terms of the 4 quadrants. We developed our own time management system. My mentees nicknamed the con killer, because it really kills a lot of wasted time and gets you some extra time every single day in your schedule. But the point is, the mentor has to make a commitment to try new things and become a tutor and a guide. Has to be willing to share information, and that means making extra time to do that. Develop a learning strategy. It's not one form for all people, but different forms for different people. And blended learning becomes an important part of this process. The mentor ultimately has to execute the program, both in terms of the curriculum and the contract. We're very happy that whenever we finish a program, we ask people what's going to happen at the end, and we get this 95%, I got a new friend, and I can't wait to keep working with this person. And what's wonderful in my particular one situation where I've been now mentoring, this is our 6th year of mentoring, many of the mentees have become mentors, and so it's really working very well. And so that you need to do it. And there really is a cumulative learning process that takes place by the mentor, and you want to grow. Mentors benefit too. It's one of the reasons we put that as a question. At least they do in the super mentoring program, and that's one of the unique parts of super mentoring, as we'll discuss. Mentors can grow because they become teachers. You might have been a supervisor, but no one ever taught you to be a teacher. You begin to improve your own work-related issues because as you teach, you learn from yourself. For those of you who know a little bit about me, I'm a lawyer and a psychologist, and I've been teaching my entire life law psychology and now management. And it's very important that when I'm working with people, and that I'm helping people learn, and the whole learning process is a unique thing, because as you teach, you learn, and I love taking on new courses all the time, because every new course gives me a chance to learn something new. And actually, I start every class with a section called What's Happening, and it forces me to stretch myself. You contribute more to the company, which is really what a mentor wants to do at some level. And ultimately, if the company is doing the job right, it's recognizing you as being a major player in the organization. One of the organizations we have has turned its orientation program from senior management to mentors, because they've realized they can communicate this stuff very effectively. The mentoring agreement, as I mentioned, is a critical part, because what it does is it makes sure it flows well. They agree to meet regularly, and we'll talk about the schedule I use in my mentoring programs, super mentoring programs, setting goals, it's the very beginning, holding each other accountable, maintaining confidentiality. There's a lot of confidentiality that takes place. There are times I will have a mentor or a mentee tell me in the very beginning that the person's actually thinking of leaving. And so I focus more on skills and showing where the advantage of the company might be in terms of growing it, and whether the person stays or not. If they've gained the new skills and the organization is flexible, very often we're able to keep the employee through that relationship. And that's the key part. You're always assessing the relationship between the mentor and the mentee. The mentoring benefits the company, and that's, again, the key part of it, because a performance culture is there. Everyone knows the goal is not just to do your job, but to do it better, to investigate it, to be more creative, to be more disciplined, to manage your time better, to acquire the skills, to be better team members. That's all part of being a performance culture and measuring it and feeding it back. So when a company makes this decision to be a super mentoring company, it's investing in both the mentees and the mentors. as future leaders. And it's wonderful for me to sit with companies year after year or just respond with those that I've done it before and see how that's really working. It encourages everyone to pursue growth. It improves skills and knowledge cost effectively because you're not bringing in an external person to train. You're actually incorporating training into the major process. And you're increasing retention by high performers. They feel more confident, they feel more valuable, and that's what it's about. So you have a group, and as a super mentoring process, it has the impact of attracting top-notch people. People love working for a company, where they know they're going to make a difference. But, and that's the reason for today's presentation, it's not easy. Being a mentee is a new role. For many people, they get thrown into an organization without any help. I took a job when I left Capitol Hill, and one of the first things they did is they said, okay, you're going to sit in your office, and and it was literally a foot high. Here's a manual of everything you need to know about every part of the organization. Your job is to sit and read it. It didn't make any sense, some of the systems and skills and that they were looking for, whereas a mentor could have walked me through what's important in a lot less time. For mentors, it's also important because mentoring is a new skill. Being a good teacher is not an easy thing. I'm privileged to be a good teacher, and I get phenomenal ratings when I get my feedback from my students. But it's a role I've learned that you have to put your heart and soul into. And so I might be the absolute best anything, accountant, controller, CFO, it doesn't matter, IT specialist, but teaching, mentoring, it's a different skill. And that's why super mentoring was created, to be able to help the mentors do a better job with strict confidentiality of the learning process of how to help mentees. So you get people who may not have been great learners learning how to do it well. So let me just define then very clearly what makes super mentoring different. Super doesn't mean I'm Superman, though that was our initial joke in many of the early years. It means supervising. The supervising mentor who's coaching mentors to optimize the impact for everyone. So what we do as super mentors is we encourage mentors to be creative and innovative, to think outside the box, stand back and look at the situation that the manager, supervisor can't do, to consult with the mentors over the mentoring process and the challenges they run into, facilitate their coaching by providing the kind of skills they need and helping them assess their role and their impact of their actions on other people. What's their emotional IQ? Why is that relevant? Helping them become better executives is the second part of this equation, helping them develop their own skills, their own characteristics, their own careers, and then reaching into themselves to do that well. And finally, what super mentoring does is take the improvement by mentees for themselves, the improvement for mentors for themselves, feed it back with HR into the cultural change within the company. So what are some of the typical issues that have been dealt with in mentoring? Well, time management's a big one because we're all overloaded trying to figure out what to do, and all the new studies are showing that multitasking actually is less productive than single tasking. So how do you manage your time? And we go through many different systems and implement them for people. Project planning and organizational tools are very important. How do you do that? What do you do? Just today we were trying to differentiate the difference between tasks and projects in terms of both the recurrence, the amount of time necessary, and the lessons learned. Improving interpersonal communication, clearly, again, as part of teams, we need to be able to do that and do that effectively. Delegating effectively. We ran into one boss just recently who loves not having a communication face-to-face, apparently, and communicates literally with person's right-hand person who's right outside that person's desk, right outside that office, rather, is where that person's desk is, and they correspond through emails all the time. And the mentee really prefers to talk face-to-face. So that's the mentor's job, to help bridge that gap and communicate it so the two start doing that. And in this case, also teaching how to take the initiative of moving forward. People have speaking fears. That's where presentation excellence first cut its teeth. You have to work with 5,000 senior executives, C-level people, all the way down to individual consultants who are just working, who fear speaking, don't know how to put together presentations that are effectively helping them do that. That becomes part of the process, because as you grow in an organization, the fears that you didn't even confront before suddenly become part of what your life's about. acquiring technical skills. Software keeps changing. Technology keeps changing. And being an effective team member becomes something we spend a lot of time on. How do you share with other people? What's the most effective way, etc. For the executive, there's a lot of things we're also doing. We're focusing on leadership skills. When should you use different styles of leadership? When should you learn how, as a leader, you need to be focused on business development, focusing on new marketing internally or externally, or helping sell ideas more effectively? How do you encourage creativity, innovation, and teamwork within your group, within another group, within the company as a general? What are your presentation and networking skills? Again, everybody, if you're going to move up that corporate ladder, needs to acquire them so they can move up, and even those people at the top level need it. We do a lot of our presentation work is with C-level people all the time. You're adopting ultimately an executive presence, okay? You need to understand that everything you do as a mentor and executive is broadcasting your integrity, is broadcasting the value of your brand, and that you need to understand how to play it. And finally, what are your career options? You know, there's a problem that you could be the senior vice president of finance, but there's only one vice president of finance, one president of finance or CFO that you could report to, and that person at 23 may not be moving. So how do you handle your own executive development? And last, I want to focus on the emotional intelligence competencies, critical things that we focus on as part of the things that make people more effective. Your self-awareness. Do you recognize your feelings as they're happening and deal with them? How do you manage your own behavior, your own influence? Life is full of stress. How do you handle your stress? Social awareness, how you deal with other people, their empathy, organizational awareness, what's proper, what's improper. How do you handle a service orientation? And finally, relationship management, everything from how to communicate effectively to influence people and to develop people. How you focus on these issues determines your EIQ, emotional intelligence quotient, and makes you more effective. And these are issues that can be dealt with through the process of mentoring, and we encourage doing that. So there's a lot that both the mentee and mentor gets, and you have to focus in on them. And that's where the super mentor comes in, because being a step outside of the process itself, this person can, as I do, watch and see, is the person becoming more socially aware? Are they maintaining great relations with others? So for those of you now who have an understanding of how it works as a culture, let's just get down to some more easy specifics. Imagine you're now a mentor, and you're working with someone, and you're going to mentor that person. Okay? What are the things you should do to be able to be a successful mentor? So let's go through maybe a simple roadmap of 6 things. The needs, you have to focus on them. What are the goals you want to set? Let's make them smart. In everyday interaction, what you need to do is be aware of inconsistencies. You have to read people well. You have to find the communication match so that you can communicate and persuade well. Time management gets critical. What's time as a tool, and how do you use it effectively? And ultimately, you build a relationship. And as I alluded to before, one of the things that I'm most satisfied with is watching people build long-term relations that can be used to help people all the time. So let's begin on the focusing on needs. Okay, let's try to understand that when it comes to needs, we have different kinds of needs. Okay, and you have to consider them. Is it development? Is someone at a stage where they're growing as a person or in their career and they want to change them? We very often get people who finish, for example, a degree, undergraduate or graduate. They come into a job. It's not exactly what they thought they were doing. They thought when they finished school they'd be running the country, if not the company, and that's not the role they have. Where do they fit? How do they fit? How do they develop? It becomes a big issue. They've had great work skills, work habits, but that doesn't mean they have the same thing in a company. How does it change? Okay, they've taken care of themselves, but have they really learned how to work with a network and be able to support with a team? They just maybe never had that kind of experience. They need to understand the difference between strategy and tactics. A company is interested in strategy, and you need to figure out how to build effective tactics to execute them sometimes. But are you only seeing the tactics, or you still come back and you see the strategy? And finally, what's your integrity? Okay, because you always want to maintain it, both in terms of yourself and your role. We do a lot of work with investor relations companies through one of our subsidiaries at Presentation Excellence. And every time I think about Enron and WorldCom and Tyco, the important thing is they didn't mentor them very effectively about maintaining integrity. Some simple rules. Be exact. When you communicate, really listen to the words we use. So someone says to you, I can't write a good memo. What does that mean? They can't write. They can't write a memo that's well written. They can't write a good, meaning communicating a point memo. What are you really trying to communicate? You can't. You can email it, but you can't write it. You can't communicate it. What is it really trying to get at? Sometimes what you have to understand is that the words we use aren't precise, and you need to listen a second step. And one of the mentoring things we focus on is listening, hearing it. So, for example, imagine I said to you, I want to have something that's integrated. Well, if you think about it, the very first integrated human being was created by Shelley when she wrote the book Frankenstein, because Dr. Frankenstein took body parts and sewed them together and created them. Okay, so that's the first integrated human being. On the other hand, that's not what people want. They usually want a holistic solution of how things should go together. Okay, part of the problem we have, therefore, is we need to visualize success. We need to understand where we're going and what we're doing. And with mentoring, you need to do that too, because you don't want to just build a process. It's like you don't want to just build a house. You don't want one that you can huff and puff and blow it down. You want one that's rock solid. So we focused on the fact that what you're doing is helping the person develop what they need and be able to sustain it over time. That's our key. In a performance culture, it's sustaining that becomes a critical measure of success. Second part you need to do is focus on SMART goals. Some of you are familiar with SMART means: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-defined. And so what we do in our process, as you'll see later, is we focus on goals. And what we do in those goals is have people really see if they've got them. Have they broken them down to something very specific they can work with? We make sure that the goals are written in our very first sessions and then reviewed. And we review that through the entire process. And they're used to hold people accountable, so that we can do them and change them. And so generally at midpoint, I will change some of the goals because the world has changed on us. Third, in the interaction you have, be aware of inconsistencies. The mentee may not be dishonest, but may not be completely honest in telling you what they're doing, and you need to be aware of it. You need to understand that what you say and how you say it are two different things. The words and the expressions may be inconsistent. The rational part may say one thing, but the emotional part may be a completely different meaning. Whereas I like to think action speaks louder than words. So in this particular case, I'm looking at this gentleman who tells me how relaxed and happy he is. Sure don't get it by watching him. So you want to say, someone says they're comfortable and they're fidgeting, there's an inconsistency you need to deal with. Listen to the emotional tone. Listen to the words people use. Because people's tone, Jerome, you can tell that means something bad happened and you got to deal with that. And you can do the action support your words, because what happens is when that doesn't happen, it's our job to help communicate what we should be doing to get that correct. One of my pet peeves, and I've talked about this in many of our presentations, is the inconsistencies of companies that say, please hold, your call is important, and leave you on there for an hour. Or as I had again last night with a particular provider, whenever something goes wrong, they connect me from one person and they ask all the ID questions to the next person who doesn't have any of what I just gave, and it starts all over, to the next person who repeats the same cycle. If you're not going to bother passing on the information in today's day and age where everyone can be on a network, it doesn't make sense, and it tells me something about customer service is really not important. Their actions speak a lot louder than their words, especially when they've learned how to say, I apologize, I apologize, I apologize 30 times in 1 minute. What you want to understand, therefore, when you're looking at inconsistencies is what's behind it, okay? You really want to try to get a feeling for the fact that maybe what you're looking for is ambivalence, or a doubt, or insecurity. Maybe there's a competing interest even, or maybe there's a lack of motivation. We had one person in a mentoring class, the mentee wanted to finish school, hadn't finished school, took the job, and it was the number one goal, went through a lot of planning to come through all the things they could do to finish school, but every single meeting that would take place to move the person one step forward was never followed through. And so after a while, it became very clear this person really wasn't motivated to go to the school and work on it. And we had to get corroborating information to see if this was a pattern with other things as well. A lot of talk, no walk. Next is you have to understand in a team, and you're a dyad is a very special case of a team, you need to interact effectively by matching your ability to communicate with someone else's. The key to understand is this. We don't all see things the same way. Okay? We see things from our perspectives differently, our history differently, our cultures differently, and just because we're different human beings. I'm showing you a picture in front of you, and some of you are seeing a beautiful vase. Others may see two profiles that come in the middle. Whichever you see is just a perspective. It's not a right and a wrong. But if you're talking about, wow, I can't believe those two people are staring at each other, or, gee, that vase is beautiful, but I'm not sure I would like to use it for flowers, you'd be talking two different languages to each other. So you need to understand how other people see things. One of the ways to do that is to recognize we don't communicate in English in the same way. There is neuro-linguistic programming, NLP for some of you, basically focuses on the fact that we communicate in different sensory perceptions. So someone might say, I see your point. That tells me it's a visualizer. I hear you as a listener. I feel your pain as a kinesthetic person. So you need to understand the question, how is the other person processing information? And only that way can you make sure that you're communicating. And so the lesson I'll leave you here is when you hear how the other person communicates, communicate back that way, because then they'll listen to you better, or feel you, or see you better. Remember, we're not all equally talented, so don't think if you told somebody this is easy and simple to do, they get it. They have to tell you they got it because they may not see it that way. In fact, you have to keep in mind that we don't all communicate the same because we focus on different issues. For those of you who are familiar with tests like DISC and Myers-Briggs, there are all kinds of different ways of looking at it. I like to use this one as a simple example because it's one many of us grew up with. If you're a Star Trek fan and you think about the original Star Trek, though it's continued in all the other series, you have, in the original one, you had three people. You had James Kirk, who was the captain, very action-oriented. You had Mr. Spock, rather, who was fact and systems oriented, and what he was able to do is focus on those facts and systems, just give me the facts type people. Whereas Dr. Leonard McCoy was a people person. He cared about feelings, okay? The big picture planner in part was Kirk again when he became the admiral, and so he worked that way. So you need to understand what is your communication style, what's the other style, and then match it. Because if you're focusing on facts and figures and the other person's dealing with personal feelings, you're just not resonating. If you want to resonate, you want to have a difference in the mentoring process, you've got to match those feelings. And then one of the most important parts about things is to be creative. It's part of super mentoring I personally enjoy is watching the mentors reach out of their normal box and try to find new ways of connecting the dots and being creative. How else can we do something? And it's that exercise in part that I think is part of the executive development the mentors in our programs get. And if you make a request, again, just as we said before, make it doable. Make each one like smart planning, a SMART goal. It's a request that's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-to-time. Something people can do. When it's vague, it doesn't get done. So now you've got a sense of how to communicate, but keep in mind we do live in a third dimension, and a fourth dimension, that's time. And you should learn how to use time as a tool, not to try to have everything at one time being done. So first question I always say when you're approaching someone is it a good time? Not everything is a good time for someone else. And what may be a good time for you may not be for someone else. And someone may not even have your share and concern about time. I'm involved with a company called Vistage. Some of you may know it's a CEO organization. I run Vistage New York. writtennout.com. You can check it on the website. I work with C-level executives who are successful, want to be more successful. And people want to set up interviews with me. I tell them I need a 10-minute interview, and they're shocked. And I said, 10 minutes I can tell who doesn't fit, and if it fits, people will want me to stay. And so it's a simple system to do, is to understand their need, not my need. And then watch the other person's body language. Is that person really willing to listen? It may not be a good time, even though they've said it. Hear it. And if you're going to introduce something that's a little controversial and scary, prepare the listener. This is a really good time to discuss this issue. Person says, no, I'm overwhelmed, I'm really having a bad day today. It's not the right time to do that. I just had a call today from someone who just came to a doctor who's got to go to the hospital and said, can we talk about something? I said, are you really ready for it now? And the person said, no, let me call you later. It's very important to understand that. If you've done that, then you're really at the stage where you have to get to, and that's you've built a relationship. You're working together, you're sharing ideas, you're sharing communication, and you're moving forward. Remember, the goal is teamwork. You want to be able to succeed as a team by working together and understanding how you're going to move yourselves as a mentor-mentee, the company forward. To do that, you're going to sometimes have to go through what we like to call the uncomfort zone. And that's really mentoring's critical part. You're going to make people change. This is a change effect. They have to get a new skill, so they're going to acquire a new knowledge. They're going to have to give up some habits, okay? We had one person who had real trouble getting up. Every morning was a problem getting up. And so we came up with a system of moving the alarm clock to a different place, making it really loud, so the person physically had to get out of bed to shut it off. Changing the habit of just hitting the button and going back to sleep meant changing the physical atmosphere. Simple little thing made a big difference. Person was able to actually make the morning meetings, and suddenly people realized the person really did care about what was going on. There's a whole new set of relationships, a whole new set of commitments you have to make, but you have to change, and that means you go through the uncomfort zone. Now, as a mentor, you're helping that person go through this, so please be careful about your communication. You always want to be constructive. As a person tells you they do something, let's assume wrong, incorrect, inappropriate, don't make it a personal issue. Make it something about the situation, about the problem, about the challenge. Be constructive. How can the person change the situation? What new skill could be added? It isn't about a personality type. It's about the things people can change. Never be global. Be specific. So if someone failed to write a good memo, that doesn't mean they're a lousy writer. If someone was mumbling in a conversation, doesn't mean they're terrible presenters. It may be just in this one case, in this one situation, they had a problem. And the way you do that is by being descriptive. You know, when you were speaking, your voice dropped, you had your hands in front of your face, and I noticed that your knees started shaking, okay? It seems to me I was picking up this situation, you were very nervous, okay? So it's a descriptive. You're valuing your listening there because you're giving the person an ability to share the behaviors and deal with them and change based on that, and then provide some feedback to make some change in the future. If you build the relationship, what happens is whether you're right or wrong about everything is secondary, because what happens is you've built the goodwill necessary to overcome inevitable problems and challenges that will come up. So you've solved one problem, you can move to the next one now. You want to maintain short-term and long-term commitments that you have with the person. And so, again, if you're working in a company, the mentoring process is important because you're going to work with this person after the mentor relationship ends. And finally, what you want to do is you want to make sure that it's easy to have future relations. It's, again, wonderful watching the mentees become mentors over time and share it with other people and other companies, and all of them become more important in a performance-oriented company. So the result is simple. Mentoring benefits everyone. Mentees benefit, mentors benefit, the company benefits, greater teamwork gets done, greater performance gets achieved, and that's really the goal in what we're trying to do. So now, for those of you who are thinking of launching a program, don't have one yet, but you're saying, wow, this is cool, maybe I could do this. Let me give you some simple steps to get you going. First thing is you have to develop the appropriate mentees and mentors. What you have to do is you have to find a match between areas of interest. They should not work for each other. They should work in different departments or in different areas so that they can add different perspectives and learn, but they have to be appropriate. They have to be willing to want to listen, learn, share. You invite them to participate with a kickoff meeting where you explain the mentoring process so people understand what mentoring is, and super mentoring if you're doing super mentoring. Mentees and mentors then get together in teams. They have a private meeting. They get to know each other. They get to know what the mentee wants to accomplish. And then what the mentee has to do with some help is develop specific goals. Again, what is it they'd like to do in the next 4 months, let's assume, to achieve it? We used to do 6-month programs. We found now in 4-month programs we get really a lot of traction done. It's a little more cost-effective for our clients and provides a great structure to do it. The pre-program steps are very important, set up by the HR person or the coordinator, and that is to determine the goals, the the scope, the number of people involved, identify the people, what criteria is right in matching them, and then launching that launch meeting to get people going. Again, in that, after they've been introduced to the process, they get to know each other, they brainstorm immediately on the goals that the mentee has. And what I like to do is I have my mentees focus on 10 different goals and then prioritize the top 3 or 4 that they want to work on, and then begins to lay out some ideas for strategies for accomplishing them and how do we measure success. Very important part. Mentor and mentee then meet each week for about half an hour to go over the issues, review what's happened, provide some input for what's hasn't happened, to go to the next stage, provide some resources for learning. The goal is for everyone to share their experience. So then the mentee has a mentor learn what he or she needs, and the mentor is ready to help. The mentor now has to help also, has to figure out, well, how do I teach better? How do I help that person accomplish the goal? What other resources can I do to use to solve that problem? And so the mentors meet with the super mentor to be able to get those resources, to get the advice. So it's a coaching of a coaching process and focusing on learning whether or not the person is teaching and sharing in the proper way that you'd want that to be accomplished. The super mentoring process then consists of a weekly meeting between the mentee and the mentor, and a weekly meeting between the mentor and the mentee, at least in the 4-month program. Obviously, many different structures can be used to make this work. We recommend in our process a mid-cycle meeting with everyone to discuss the program, so people who are in a different team see what other people are accomplishing and get them inspired. Wow, we could do that too. Let's learn to do that as well. We do a final evaluation at the end, both on skills and on social roles and impact for the mentee and the mentor. And then what we do is we provide HR with a report explaining what's been accomplished and where we think next steps might be. And then we encourage from the very beginning and reinforce at the end that the mentors have given of their time, they've given of their attention, they've given their love, that they get some kind of recognition and rewards, and most companies understand the value, and they do that nicely. If you follow our advice, you can launch a program and be a hero. Be a hero in the company-wide approach for your C-level executives who are watching you, sharing, inspiring, and giving back in your company. If you're a mentor, you're a hero to yourself. You're a hero to your mentee, helping your mentee. And what you are is an influence to all the people around you and to a mentee. What's happened is you're a hero because you're coming out smarter, faster than you've ever been before about being able to accomplish things consistent with the company goals. You're aligned with those goals, but you're also ready now to move your career a little bit farther. And with that, I want to thank you today for attending our Super Mentoring program. For those of you who've been quickly sending questions about today's presentation, if you're interested in a copy of the slides, you can purchase them. Go back to the link we have. You can purchase them. If you want the archive presentation that I've just delivered, we will be saving that for you, and we'll be probably posting it on our website in about a week, so you should be able to get it. And this way you can share it with other people in your company.